The city never sleeps, and neither does justice or vengeance. Detective Janelle Morrison thought she knew exactly who the enemy was. With her badge gleaming and her gun holstered, she'd sworn to bring down the most elusive crime lord in the city, Sang Min, the ghost who moved through shadows leaving no trace but broken laws and shattered lives. But what happens when the hunter becomes the hunted? When the line between right and wrong blurs like rain on a windshield? When the man you're supposed to capture is the only one who sees the bruises you hide beneath your uniform? This is a story of two souls caught in a deadly game, where every glance is a challenge, every touch is a risk, and love might be the most dangerous crime of all. Before we dive in, if you love intense romance, enemies to lovers tension, and stories that'll have you on the edge of your seat, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Drop a comment and tell me, Team Janelle or Team Sang Min? Now, let's get into it. The rain hammered against the abandoned warehouse roof like bullets. Janelle's heart pounded in her chest as she pressed her back against the cold metal wall, gun drawn, breath coming in controlled bursts. 3 months. 3 months she'd been tracking him, and tonight, finally, she had a lead. Sang Min. The name whispered in the darkest corners of the city. The man who moved drugs, weapons, and secrets with the precision of a surgeon and the ruthlessness of a predator. Come out, Sang Min, she called into the darkness, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. LAPD, you're surrounded. A lie, of course. She was alone. Her partner had called in sick, and her sergeant had told her to wait for backup. But Janelle Morrison didn't wait. Not when she was this close. A low chuckle echoed through the warehouse, rich and deep, carrying an accent that made every syllable sound like silk over steel. Surrounded? Detective Morrison, you insult my intelligence. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. You're alone. I can hear your heartbeat from here. She spun, trying to locate him, but the shadows played tricks in the flickering emergency lights. Why don't you stop hiding like a coward and face me? She challenged. A coward? Another laugh, this one closer. Is that what they teach you at the academy? That a man who survives is a coward? Suddenly, he was there, materializing from the darkness like smoke taking form. Janelle's breath caught despite herself. She'd seen his file photo, grainy and unclear, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of him. Sang Min stood 6 feet tall, his frame lean and powerful beneath a perfectly tailored black suit. His dark hair was pushed back, revealing sharp, aristocratic features that seemed carved from stone. But it was his eyes that held her. Dark, intense, and burning with an intelligence that made her feel exposed, as if he could see straight through her. Drop your weapon and put your hands up, she commanded, her gun trained on his chest. He didn't move. Instead, he tilted his head, studying her with an expression that was almost curious. You're different from what I expected, he said softly. The legendary Detective Morrison. The woman who's closed more cases than anyone in her precinct. They say you're relentless, fearless. His eyes narrowed slightly. They didn't mention you were beautiful. Flattery won't save you from prison, she snapped, even as unwanted heat crept up her neck. Hands up, now. He smiled then, a slow, dangerous curve of his lips that made her pulse spike. Make me. Before she could react, he moved, not toward her, but to the side. And suddenly the lights went out completely. Janelle fired into the darkness, once, twice, but she knew even as she pulled the trigger that he was already gone. She stood in the pitch black, breathing hard, furious with herself. He'd played her, again. Until next time, Detective. His voice drifted from somewhere near the exit. I look forward to our next dance. By the time backup arrived 20 minutes later, the warehouse was empty. Janelle stood in the rain outside, her clothes soaked, her pride bruised, and something else stirring in her chest, something she refused to name. The apartment door slammed behind her, and Janelle flinched despite herself. Where the hell have you been? Blake's voice cut through the small space, sharp with anger. She set her keys on the table carefully, keeping her movements controlled. Work ran late. I texted you. Work. He spat the word like poison as he crossed the living room toward her. Blake Richmond, her boyfriend of 2 years. On paper, he was perfect. A successful lawyer, handsome, charming when he wanted to be. You're always at work, out chasing criminals while I'm here waiting like some kind of idiot. Blake, I'm a detective. You knew that when we started dating. Don't. He grabbed her arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Don't make excuses. You know what your problem is, Janelle? You think you're better than everyone. Think you're so tough with your badge and your gun. She wanted to pull away, to use the training that could put him on the floor in seconds. But she stood frozen, the way she always did when it was just the two of them. Strong, capable Detective Morrison disappeared behind these walls, replaced by someone she barely recognized. I don't think that, she said quietly. Then start acting like you appreciate what you have. Other women would kill to be with someone like me. He released her arm suddenly, turning away. Go clean yourself up. You look like hell. In the bathroom, Janelle stared at her reflection. Dark skin, high cheekbones, full lips pressed into a tight line. She looked tired. Worn. With careful precision, she pulled her sleeves back down and splashed water on her face. By the time she emerged, Blake was on the couch, beer in hand, watching TV as if nothing had happened. That was always how it went. 3 days later, Janelle was back on the hunt. This time, she had solid intelligence. Sang Min was meeting with a weapons dealer at an upscale restaurant in downtown LA. She'd convinced her captain to let her go undercover. The black dress she wore was a far cry from her usual pantsuit and badge. It hugged every curve. The neckline lower than she'd normally wear. The fabric expensive and borrowed from the department's undercover wardrobe. She'd let her natural curls loose, falling in waves around her shoulders, and applied just enough makeup to look the part of a wealthy patron. The restaurant was all dark wood and soft lighting, the kind of place where a single entree cost more than her weekly grocery budget. Janelle sat at the bar, nursing a glass of wine, her eyes scanning the room through the mirror behind the bottles. And then she saw him. Sang Min entered like he owned the place, which for all she knew, he might. He wore a charcoal gray suit tonight, his hair styled perfectly, and every eye in the restaurant tracked his movement. He wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, clearly security, but her training picked out at least 3 more positioned around the room. He moved to a private booth in the back, and Janelle's heart sank. From her position, she couldn't hear anything they'd discuss. She was debating her next move when a shadow fell over her. Interesting choice of surveillance location, Detective. Janelle's blood turned to ice. She looked up slowly to find Sang Min standing beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy that made her head spin. I don't know what you're talking about, she said evenly. I'm just here for a drink. His smile was predatory. In a dress that costs 3 months of your salary, at a restaurant you've never visited before, sitting at the bar with a perfect view of my booth? He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more intimate than a touch. You'll need to work on your subtlety. I could arrest you right now, she said, her hand instinctively moving toward where her gun would normally be, except she'd had to leave it in her car to get past security. You could try, he agreed. His eyes traveled over her slowly, appreciatively, and she felt that gaze like a physical caress. But I think we both know how that would end. Besides, you look far too beautiful tonight to waste the evening in an interrogation room. Stop calling me beautiful, she hissed. Why? Does it bother you that your enemy finds you attractive? He had the audacity to look amused. Or does it bother you that you don't hate hearing it? Before she could respond, his hand caught hers, the one with the fading bruises Blake had left. His touch was surprisingly gentle as he pushed up her sleeve slightly, revealing the marks. His entire demeanor changed in an instant. The amusement vanished, replaced by something cold and dangerous. Who did this? None of your business. She pulled her hand away, tugging her sleeve down. Someone hurt you, he said, and there was steel beneath the silk of his voice now. A cop who puts killers in prison comes home to someone who puts bruises on her skin. The irony would be amusing if it weren't so tragic. You don't know anything about my life. I know more than you think. Janelle Morrison, age 28, top of your class at the academy, youngest detective in your precinct, no family. Your mother died when you were 16, father unknown, and you're in a relationship with Blake Richmond, defense attorney. His eyes hardened. A defense attorney who has anger management issues and 3 sealed domestic violence complaints from previous girlfriends. Janelle felt the blood drain from her face. I make it my business to know everything about the people who hunt me, he said simply. But knowing those things doesn't prepare me for this. He gestured vaguely at her arm. You face down armed criminals without fear, but you let that pathetic excuse for a man lay hands on you? I don't need your judgment, she said, standing abruptly. And I don't need your pity. She tried to brush past him, but he caught her wrist, carefully, she noticed, avoiding the bruises. Not pity, detective. Something far more complicated. His eyes held hers, intense and unwavering. Leave him. Why do you care? The question seemed to catch him off guard. For a moment, something flickered across his face, something raw and human beneath the calculated exterior. I don't know, he admitted quietly, but I do. They stood there, frozen in the moment, the noise of the restaurant fading into background static. Janelle's pulse hammered in her throat, and she couldn't tell if it was fear, anger, or something far more dangerous. The spell broke when one of his men approached, whispering urgently in Korean. Sang Min's jaw tightened, and he released her wrist. We'll continue this conversation another time, he said. But Janelle? He waited until she met his eyes. When he hurts you again, and he will, remember that you had the strength to face me in that warehouse. You have the strength to walk away from him, too. Then he was gone, disappearing into the private room, leaving Janelle standing at the bar with her heart racing and her world tilted on its axis. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of failed raids, of always being one step behind Sang Min, of finding empty warehouses and abandoned meeting locations. Her captain was losing patience, and Janelle was losing her mind. But worse than the professional frustration was the personal hell. Blake had gotten worse, more controlling, more volatile. He monitored her phone, questioned every late night, every unexplained absence. And when she couldn't provide answers that satisfied him, his hands spoke for him. She'd gotten good at hiding it, long sleeves even in the LA heat, makeup strategically applied, excuses ready for any question. Her partner Marcus had started to notice, though. The way she flinched at sudden movements, the way she always made sure to keep distance between herself and suspects they arrested. Janelle? He'd said just yesterday, concern written all over his face. If something's going on, nothing's going on. She'd cut him off, her voice sharper than intended. Focus on the case, Marcus. Now it was Friday night, and she was supposed to meet Blake for dinner. She'd been dreading it all day, her stomach in knots as she drove home to change. The apartment was dark when she entered, which should have been her first warning. Blake wasn't supposed to be home for another hour. You're late. His voice came from the darkness, making her jump. I texted you, she said, her hand instinctively going to her service weapon. The captain held us late for a briefing. The lamp clicked on, illuminating Blake sitting on the couch, her phone in his hand. Her personal phone, the one she'd left charging in the bedroom. Her blood ran cold. Really? He said conversationally. Because according to your messages, you've been spending an awful lot of time thinking about Sang Min. 3 separate search alerts. You looked up his background 7 times this week. You even researched Korean customs. He stood, and she noticed the empty whiskey bottle on the table. Why are you so obsessed with him, Janelle? He's my case, she said carefully. I'm a detective. Research is part of the job. Don't lie to me. The phone shattered against the wall beside her head. She didn't think. Training took over. In 2 moves, she had him spun around, his arm wrenched behind his back, his face pressed against the wall. Don't, ever, throw things at me. For a moment, she felt powerful, in control. Then Blake laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. There she is, the tough cop. You know what your problem is, Janelle? You can't decide if you want to be a man or a woman, walking around with your gun, giving orders, but you're still just a scared little girl playing dress-up. The words hit harder than his fists ever had. She released him, stepping back, and that was her mistake. He turned, and his hand caught her across the face, harder than he'd ever hit before. Janelle stumbled, tasting blood, her training scrambling in her shock. Blake, I'm done, he said, and there was something final in his voice. I'm done trying to make you into something worth keeping. You want to chase criminals? Want to obsess over some Korean mobster? Fine, but you can do it alone. He grabbed his keys and his jacket and walked out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Janelle stood in the silence, her cheek throbbing, her phone in pieces on the floor, and something breaking inside her that had been cracked for too long. She should have felt relieved, free. Instead, she felt hollow. She didn't plan to go there. Janelle told herself she was just driving, clearing her head, but her car seemed to know where it wanted to go. The address was in her case file, one of Sang Min's suspected properties, a penthouse in downtown LA with views of the entire city. She'd run surveillance on it twice, knew the security patterns, knew she'd never gotten approval for a warrant because they couldn't prove ownership. Now she stood in the parking garage, staring up at the building, her reflection in the car window showing the bruise already blooming across her cheekbone. This was insane. She was a cop about to walk into a crime lord's home. But something in Sang Min's words from the restaurant echoed in her head. You have the strength to walk away from him too. Before she could second-guess herself, she was in the elevator. The penthouse level required a key card, but she bypassed it easily, one benefit of police training. The doors opened onto a private foyer, and she barely had time to register the luxurious space before two men in black suits appeared, guns drawn. Detective Morrison, one said in accented English, "You're expected." Expected? They led her through hallways decorated with expensive art and into a massive living room with floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled below like scattered diamonds. Sang Min stood by the windows, a glass of whiskey in hand, wearing black slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked more relaxed than she'd ever seen him, almost domestic, and it made him somehow more dangerous. He turned when she entered, and whatever greeting he'd prepared died on his lips. His eyes fixed on her face, on the bruise, and his entire body went rigid. "Get out!" he said quietly to his men. They disappeared without question. The silence stretched. Sang Min crossed the room with controlled precision, each step measured as he was afraid sudden movement might shatter something fragile. He stopped inches from her, and slowly, carefully, his hand came up to cup her unmarked cheek. His touch was feather-light, reverent almost, and Janelle found herself leaning into it despite every warning bell in her head. "He did this," Sang Min said, and it wasn't a question. She nodded, not trusting her voice. "And you came here." His thumb traced her cheekbone gently. "Why?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I'm letting you touch me. I don't know anything anymore except—" Her voice cracked. "Except that when you said I was strong enough to walk away, I wanted to believe you." Something shifted in his expression, and suddenly his other hand was in her hair, tilting her face up to his. "Listen to me, Janelle Morrison. You are the strongest person I've ever met. You face me down with nothing but courage and conviction. You hunt monsters in the dark and refuse to blink. The man who did this to you?" His voice dropped to something deadly. "He's the coward. Not you. Never you." A sob caught in her throat, one she'd been holding back for months, maybe years. "I'm a cop. I help people. How could I let this happen to me? What does that make me?" "Human," he said simply. "It makes you human." And then somehow she was crying, really crying, and he was holding her, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other wrapped around her waist, and she was letting him, letting this criminal, this man she was supposed to arrest, hold her while she fell apart. "I can't be here," she said against his chest, even as she made no move to pull away. "This is wrong. You're wrong?" He pulled back just enough to look at her. "What's wrong is that you've been fighting alone for so long you forgot what it feels like to have someone in your corner. What's wrong is that the system you serve failed to protect you. What's wrong is that a good man didn't see how extraordinary you are and treasure every moment with you." "And you do?" She meant it as a challenge, but it came out like hope. "See how extraordinary I am?" His eyes darkened, and the hand in her hair tightened slightly. "From the moment you walked into that warehouse, gun drawn, absolutely certain you could take me down? Yes, I saw you. I see you, Janelle. All of you." The air between them crackled with tension. Janelle knew she should leave, knew every second she spent here was a betrayal of everything she'd sworn to uphold. But his hands were gentle where Blake's had been cruel, his eyes were warm where Blake's had been cold, and God help her, she wanted to stay. "What am I doing?" she whispered. "Surviving," he said. "Now come. You need ice for that bruise, and I'm going to make you tea. We can discuss the philosophical implications of your choices later. Despite everything, she almost laughed. You're going to make me tea? I'm Korean. Tea solves everything. He guided her to the couch, his hand never leaving the small of her back. Sit. And Janelle, you're safe here. I promise you that. The terrifying thing was, she believed him. Janelle woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and panic spiking through her chest. It took her a moment to remember where she was. Sang Min's penthouse, on his couch, covered with a cashmere blanket that probably cost more than her car. She sat up quickly, checking her watch. 7 a.m. She'd slept here. All night. You talk in your sleep. She spun to find Sang Min emerging from what looked like a kitchen, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He'd changed into fresh clothes, gray slacks and a black sweater, and his hair was damp from a shower. She stood, the blanket falling away, and realized she was still in yesterday's clothes. I should go. This was a mistake. Was it? He set the mugs on the coffee table and regarded her calmly. You came here because you needed sanctuary. I provided it, no strings, no expectations, just safety. You're a criminal, and you're a cop. He smiled slightly. We've established this. Doesn't make your bruise any less real or your need for a safe place any less valid. Janelle pressed her fingers to her temples, feeling a headache building. My captain would fire me if he knew I was here. Then don't tell him, Sang Min said reasonably. He picked up one of the mugs and held it out to her. Cream, 2 sugars. You mentioned it once during a stakeout you did on one of my warehouses. You were on the phone with your partner. She took the mug automatically, disturbed by how much he knew about her. You've been watching me? I've been aware of you. There's a difference. He settled into an armchair, his own coffee in hand, completely at ease. You've been hunting me for 3 months, Janelle. Did you really think I wouldn't pay attention to who was on my trail? She should leave, should walk out the door and never come back. Instead, she found herself sitting back down on the couch, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. What you said last night, she began quietly. About seeing me, all of me. What did you mean? He was quiet for a moment, studying her with those intense dark eyes. I mean that I see the detective who's brilliant and relentless and refuses to give up on a case. But I also see the woman who's been slowly disappearing into survival mode. The one who flinches at loud noises and wears long sleeves in summer. The one who's forgotten that she deserves to be treated with kindness. You don't know me, she protested weakly. Don't I? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. 3 months of observation teaches you things. I know you take your coffee sweet because your job is bitter enough. I know you visit your mother's grave every Sunday without fail. I know you haven't taken a vacation day in 2 years. I know you're brilliant at your job, but terrible at asking for help. And I know that somewhere under all that armor, there's a woman who wants to be seen as more than just a badge. The accuracy of his observations should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel exposed and understood in equal measure, a dangerous combination. Why do you care? She asked. I'm trying to put you in prison. Are you? He smiled slightly, because from where I'm sitting, you're in my home, drinking my coffee and looking at me like you can't decide if you want to arrest me or don't, she cut him off. Don't finish that sentence. Why not? Afraid of the truth? He set his mug down and stood, crossing to her with predatory grace. We've been dancing around this since the warehouse, Janelle. This thing between us, attraction, chemistry, call it whatever you want, it's been there from the beginning. It's wrong, she said, even as he settled beside her on the couch, close enough that she could feel his body heat. Many of the best things are. His hand came up to her face again, carefully avoiding the bruise. I won't lie to you about what I am. I'm not a good man by conventional standards. I've done things that would horrify you, but I'm also not what you think I am. Then what are you? Complicated. His thumb traced her lower lip, and her breath hitched. I'm a man who was born into a world I didn't choose, who learned early that power is the only protection. I'm a man who's built an empire on secrets and fear, but I'm also a man who's never hit a woman, never hurt someone who didn't deserve it, and never felt anything for anyone the way I feel when I look at you. You can't say things like that, she whispered. Why? Because you're supposed to hate me? He leaned closer, his lips inches from hers. Tell me you don't feel this. Look me in the eyes and tell me there's nothing here, and I'll never touch you again. She should say the words and leave and never look back. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, I can't. Can't lie? His other hand slid into her hair. Or can't resist? Both, neither. I don't know anymore. She was breathing hard, her heart pounding. This is crazy, we're enemies. Are we? He tilted his head. Or are we just two people on opposite sides of a line that's looking blurrier every day? And then he was kissing her, or she was kissing him, and Janelle couldn't tell who moved first and didn't care. His lips were soft and demanding at once, his hands gentle but possessive, and she was drowning in sensation. She should stop this, should pull away, should remember every reason this was wrong. Instead, her hands fisted in his sweater, pulling him closer, kissing him back with 3 months of built-up tension and confusion and desperate need to feel something other than pain. He groaned against her mouth, the sound rumbling through his chest, and suddenly she was on her back on the couch, his body covering hers, his weight anchoring her to reality even as everything else spun out of control. Janelle, he breathed against her lips, and the way he said her name, like a prayer, like a curse, like a promise, made something in her chest crack wide open. His kisses trailed down her jaw to her neck, and she arched into him, her hands finding skin under his sweater. He was all hard muscle and controlled strength, so different from... The thought of Blake crashed into her like cold water. Stop, she gasped, pushing at his shoulders. Stop, stop, stop. He pulled back immediately, breathing hard, his hair mussed from her hands. Janelle, I can't do this. She scrambled out from under him, standing on shaky legs. Blake and I just... It's been less than 12 hours, and I'm here with you, and this is insane. You're right, he said, running a hand through his hair as he sat up. I'm sorry. I pushed too hard. No, I kissed you too. Or I don't even know. She pressed her hands to her face. I need to go. I need to think. Okay. He stood slowly, giving her space. But Janelle, that apartment you share with him, don't go back there. At least not alone. Men like Blake don't accept rejection well. I can handle Blake. Can you? Because handling him has gotten you a bruised face and God knows what else. His voice hardened. Let me send someone with you. Or better yet, let me go. Absolutely not, she said firmly. This, she gestured between them. Whatever this was, it can't happen again. I have a job to do, and you have an empire to run, and we need to remember which side of the law we're on. And which side is that? He challenged. Because from where I'm standing, the law didn't protect you. I did. The words hung in the air between them, uncomfortable and undeniable. I have to go, she said finally. She headed for the door, but his voice stopped her. Janelle, the offer stands. Anytime you need sanctuary, my door is open. No judgment, no expectations. She didn't turn around, didn't trust herself to look at him. Don't make this harder than it already is. Too late, he said softly. It's been hard since the moment you walked into that warehouse. She fled. The next 2 weeks were a special kind of hell. Janelle threw herself into work, running down every lead, every whisper of Sang Min's organization. She was at the station before dawn and stayed long after sunset. Marcus watched her with growing concern, but she deflected every question with sharp efficiency. She'd gone back to the apartment once, with Marcus as backup, to collect her things. Blake had been there, drunk and belligerent, but the presence of another cop had kept him verbal instead of physical. She'd left with 2 suitcases and a hotel address. But it was Sang Min who haunted her. She couldn't stop thinking about that kiss, about the way he'd held her like she was something precious, about the gentleness in his hands and the fire in his eyes, about how wrong it should have felt, but how right it was. She'd seen him twice more in those 2 weeks, glimpses during surveillance, a chance encounter at a coffee shop where he'd simply nodded and walked away, leaving her with a racing heart and questions she couldn't answer. And then everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning when Marcus burst into the station, his face pale. We've got a situation. There's been a shooting. Where? Janelle was already grabbing her jacket. The warehouse district. Looks like a turf war between Sang Min's organization and the Vasquez cartel. Multiple casualties. Her blood turned to ice. Is Sang Min? Unknown. Scene still active. SWAT's on site. She'd never moved faster in her life. The warehouse district was chaos. Police cars, ambulances, SWAT vehicles surrounding a massive building that still echoed with the occasional gunshot. Captain Harrison was there, coordinating response teams, his face grim. "Morrison, what are you doing here? This isn't your scene." "Sang Min's my case, Captain. If he's in there, he's SWAT's problem now. We've got 4 confirmed dead, 3 more wounded. This is beyond a detective's pay grade. Captain, let me go in. He knows me. If I can talk to him." "Absolutely not." Harrison's voice was final. "You're too close to this case already. I've been hearing things, Morrison. Things about you and the suspect that better not be true." Her heart stopped. "Sir, I don't know what you've heard, but..." An explosion rocked the building, sending smoke billowing into the sky. Without thinking, Janelle broke through the police line, ignoring Harrison's shouts, ignoring protocol, ignoring everything except the terror that Sang Min might be in there. She cleared the building's entrance, her weapon drawn, moving through smoke and shadows with practiced precision. Bodies littered the floor, members of both organizations, the violence indiscriminate and brutal. "Sang Min," she called out, coughing through the smoke. "Sang Min, where are you?" Still alive. Disappointed? She spun to find him emerging from a side room, blood staining his white shirt, his usually perfect appearance disheveled. But his eyes were alert, his gun still in hand, and relief flooded through her so intensely she almost staggered. "You're hurt," she said, moving toward him. "I've had worse." He looked past her at the carnage. "You shouldn't be here. When SWAT clears this building, if they find us together..." "I don't care." The words surprised them both. "Are you okay?" "What happened?" "The Vasquez cartel decided to send a message, violently." He grimaced, pressing a hand to his side. "They weren't expecting us to send one back. You need medical attention. I need to get out of here." He started moving toward a back exit, and Janelle found herself following. "Janelle, go back. Tell them I escaped. Tell them anything. But don't follow me." "Why did you do it?" she asked instead. "Why escalate like this? The violence..." He turned on her, and for the first time, she saw real anger flash in his eyes. "You think I wanted this? The Vasquez cartel kidnapped 2 of my people, tortured them, left their bodies as a warning. I don't start wars, detective, but I damn well finish them." "There has to be another way." "What other way?" His voice rose. "Should I call the police? File a report? We both know how that works. I protect my people the only way I can, by being feared more than they are." They'd reached the back exit. Outside, she could hear sirens getting closer. "Go," she said quietly. "I'll cover for you." He stared at her. "Why would you do that?" "Because despite everything, I don't want you dead." She met his eyes. "But Sang Min? This can't continue. This violence, this war, it's going to destroy everything." "I know." The anger drained from his face, leaving something that looked like exhaustion. "Believe me, I know. But I don't know how to stop it without destroying everything I've built, without leaving my people vulnerable." "Then maybe," she said carefully, "you need to start thinking about whether what you've built is worth keeping." He was silent for a long moment, his dark eyes searching hers. Then, without warning, he pulled her into a fierce kiss, desperate and urgent, and tasting of smoke and blood, and something that felt dangerously like goodbye. When he pulled back, his hand cupped her bruised cheek one more time. "You make me want to be better than I am," he whispered. "That's terrifying." Then he was gone, disappearing into the maze of alleys behind the warehouse. Janelle stood there, her lips still tingling, her heart in pieces, knowing she'd just let a suspect escape, knowing she'd just crossed a line she could never uncross. Marcus found her 5 minutes later. "Did you see which way he went?" She looked at her partner, her friend, and lied without hesitation. "No, he was already gone when I got here." The fallout from the warehouse incident was immediate and brutal. Captain Harrison put her on administrative leave, pending an investigation into how she'd breached the perimeter. Internal Affairs opened a file. Her lieutenant avoided eye contact. The whispers in the station followed her everywhere, too obsessed with the case, unprofessional. What was she really doing in that warehouse? Janelle spent her suspension days in her hotel room, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. The kiss, the escape, the choice she'd made to protect him. She was throwing away her career for a man she was supposed to arrest. A criminal. A killer. A man who'd shown her more gentleness in 3 encounters than Blake had in 2 years. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Rooftop of the Fairmont Hotel. Midnight. Come alone. She should ignore it. Should block the number and focus on salvaging what was left of her career. Instead, at 11:45 p.m., she was parking outside the Fairmont. The rooftop was exclusive, requiring a key card she bypassed with ease. The LA skyline glittered around her. A million lights hiding a million secrets. Sang Min stood by the edge, his back to her, hands in his pockets. He'd changed clothes. Dark jeans and a leather jacket that made him look younger, less like a crime lord, and more like just a man. You came, he said without turning around. I'm an idiot, she replied, walking to stand beside him. I'm on suspension because of you. My career is circling the drain. My captain thinks I'm compromised and he's not wrong. Then why are you here? Because I can't stay away. The admission cost her, but lying felt impossible now. And I hate myself for it. He finally looked at her, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole her breath. You think you're the only one struggling with this? Every strategic decision I make is filtered through, what would Janelle think? Every order I give, I imagine your voice in my head, challenging me. You've gotten under my skin, detective, and I don't know how to cut you out. Then don't. She turned to face him fully. Don't cut me out. Let me in instead. You don't know what you're asking. Then tell me. She moved closer. Tell me who you really are, Sang Min. Not the legend, not the crime lord. You, the man who makes tea when I'm upset, who notices how I take my coffee, who looks at me like I'm the only person in the world who matters. He was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, slowly, he began to speak. My father was a businessman in Seoul, legitimate, successful, respected. When I was 12, a rival had him killed, made it look like an accident. My mother couldn't prove anything, couldn't get justice, so she took her own life 6 months later. His voice was steady, but his hands clenched. I was sent to live with my uncle here in LA. He ran an organization, not big, not flashy, but effective. He taught me that justice is a luxury bought with power. Sang Min. I didn't want this life, he continued. I wanted to be an architect, design buildings, create something beautiful and permanent. But when my uncle died and his organization fell to me, I had a choice, disband and leave hundreds of people vulnerable, or step up and protect them. So I stepped up. He turned to her. Every person who works for me, they're there by choice. I don't traffic in drugs that destroy communities. I don't exploit women or children. I operate in the gray areas where the law can't or won't reach. Does that make me good? No, but it makes me better than what would fill the vacuum if I disappeared. Janelle processed this, her detective's mind cataloging information, even as her heart ached for the boy who'd lost everything. That's a rationalization. You still break the law. I know, but I also know that 3 weeks ago, I stopped a shipment of fentanyl from hitting the streets, killed the dealers responsible. 2 months before that, I shut down a human trafficking ring your department didn't even know existed. Last year, I provided evidence that helped put away a corrupt judge. He stepped closer. I'm not asking you to approve of my methods, Janelle, but don't pretend the world is as black and white as your badge suggests. It has to be, she said, but the conviction in her voice wavered. If I start making exceptions, where does it end? How do I justify enforcing the law if I'm sleeping with someone who breaks it? Is that what you want? His hand came up to her face. To sleep with me? Her breath caught. I didn't mean. Because I think about it, he said, his voice dropping to that intimate register that made her insides melt. I think about you constantly. What you'd taste like, what sounds you'd make, how you'd look in my bed with your hair spread across my pillows. His thumb traced her lower lip. I think about whether you'd still look at me with that fire in your eyes, or if you'd finally let yourself be soft with me. Sang Min, she breathed, and his name on her lips sounded like surrender. Tell me to stop, he challenged. Tell me you don't want this, and I'll walk away. I'll disappear from LA entirely if that's what you need to keep your career. But if there's any part of you that wants this, wants us, then stop running. She should tell him to stop, should walk away, should choose her badge over her heart. Instead, she grabbed his jacket and pulled him down to her, kissing him with all the pent-up frustration and desire and confusion of the past month. He groaned into her mouth, his arms banding around her waist, lifting her slightly as he kissed her back with matching intensity. This kiss was different from the others. No interruptions, no second thoughts, just pure want and need and the terrifying feeling of falling with no idea where she'd land. His hands slid under her shirt, warm against her skin, and she shivered despite the mild night. "Your place or mine?" she gasped against his mouth. "Mine's closer," he said, then pulled back slightly. "But Janelle, once we do this, there's no pretending anymore, no more lines to hide behind." "Good," she said fiercely. "I'm tired of lines." They barely made it through the door of his penthouse. Sang Min had her pressed against the wall, his mouth on her neck, his hands everywhere, and Janelle couldn't remember why she'd ever thought resisting this was a good idea. Every touch set her on fire, every kiss erased another rule she'd lived by. "Bedroom," she managed to gasp out. "Too far," he growled against her throat, and then he was lifting her, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her to the couch. The same couch where she'd cried in his arms weeks ago. The symbolism wasn't lost on her, but she didn't have time to dwell on it because he was pulling off her shirt, his eyes darkening as he took in the lacy bra she wore. Black, simple, but the way he looked at her made her feel like she was wearing the finest lingerie. "Beautiful," he breathed. "I knew you would be, but reality is so much better than imagination." She tugged at his shirt, impatient, and he helped her, pulling it over his head and revealing a lean, muscled torso marked with several scars. Her fingers traced them, questions in her eyes. "Later," he said. "We'll talk about everything later. Right now, I just need you." His mouth found hers again, and this time the kiss was slower, deeper, a thorough exploration that made her toes curl. His hands were reverent as they mapped her body, avoiding her fading bruises, touching her like she was precious. Blake had never touched her like this, like she was something to be cherished rather than owned. The thought of her ex tried to intrude, but Sang Min seemed to sense the shift in her mood. He pulled back, his eyes searching hers. "Where did you go?" "Nowhere," she lied. "Janelle?" His hand cupped her face. "If you're not ready—" "I am," she said quickly. I barely made it through the door of his penthouse. Sang Min had her pressed against the wall, his mouth on her neck, his hands everywhere, and Janelle couldn't remember why she'd ever thought resisting this was a good idea. Every touch set her on fire, every kiss erased another rule she'd lived by. "Bedroom," she managed to gasp out. "Too far," he growled against her throat, and then he was lifting her, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her to the couch. The same couch where she'd cried in his arms weeks ago. The symbolism wasn't lost on her, but she didn't have time to dwell on it because he was pulling off her shirt, his eyes darkening as he took in the lacy bra she wore. Black, simple. "Beautiful," he breathed. "I knew you would be, but reality is so much better than imagination." She tugged at his shirt, impatient, and he helped her, pulling it over his head and revealing a lean, muscled torso marked with several scars. Her fingers traced them, questions in her eyes. "Later," he said. "We'll talk about everything later. Right now, I just need you." His mouth found hers again, and this time the kiss was slower, deeper, a thorough exploration that made her toes curl. His hands were reverent as they mapped her body, avoiding her fading bruises, touching her like she was precious. Blake had never touched her like this, like she was something to be cherished rather than owned. The thought of her ex tried to intrude, but Sang Min seemed to sense the shift in her mood. He pulled back, his eyes searching hers. "Where did you go?" "Nowhere," she lied. "Janelle." His hand cupped her face. "If you're not ready—" "I am," she said quickly. "I want this. Want you. It's just—" She took a shaky breath. "Blake never made me feel like this, like I was something worth savoring." Sang Min's expression darkened. "Blake is a fool who didn't deserve you, and when I'm done with you tonight, you'll never think about him again." It should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it sounded like a vow. He proceeded to make good on that promise. Every touch was deliberate, every kiss strategic, until Janelle was writhing beneath him, gasping his name, her fingers digging into his shoulders. He mapped every sensitive spot, learned every sound she made, played her body like an instrument until she was desperate and aching. "Please," she finally begged. "Sang Min, please." "Please what?" he asked against her skin, and she could feel his smile. "You know what," she growled, which only made him laugh. a genuine delighted sound that made her heart flip. "I want to hear you say it." "I want you," she said, meeting his eyes. "I want you inside me. I want to forget every rule I've ever followed. I want." He kissed her, swallowing the rest of her words, and finally, gave her what they both needed. "To think for a moment, I thought you were gay." Mm-mm. She moaned with bliss, her eyes fluttering as he moved in and out slowly like gentle waves. He stared into her lustful eyes, his heart tearing with passion. "I was considering for a moment, until your stupid mouth made my manhood stand. Tonight, I may consider punishing it, baby." She rolled her eyes, gripping the sheet. "Oh yes, baby, please punish me." Later, much later, they lay tangled together in his massive bed, the city lights painting patterns on the ceiling. Janelle's head rested on his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "What are we doing?" she asked quietly. "Honestly, I have no idea." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "But I don't want to stop. We'll destroy each other," she said. "My career, your empire, they can't coexist." "Can't they?" He shifted so he could look at her. "What if there was a way?" "What way?" "I can't just ignore what you do. And you can't just stop being who you are." "What if I could?" The question hung in the air between them. "What if I told you I've been working on a way out, that I've been building legitimate businesses, setting up succession plans?" She sat up, the sheet falling away, not caring about her nakedness. "Are you serious?" "I've been thinking about it for a while," he admitted. "But meeting you made it urgent. I don't want to be the villain in your story, Janelle. I want to be—" He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "What? What do you want to be?" "Yours," he said simply. "I want to be yours." The declaration should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. "It won't be easy," she warned. "People in your organization won't just let you walk away. And my department, God, if they find out about this." "Then we'll be careful," he said. "We'll figure it out. Together." She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe they could find a way through this impossible situation. But a small voice in her head whispered that it was already too late, that they'd crossed too many lines, and there would be consequences neither of them could foresee. The next 6 weeks were the strangest of Janelle's life. By day, she fought to keep her job. Internal Affairs cleared her of wrongdoing in the warehouse incident, but Captain Harrison remained suspicious. She was back on duty, but reassigned to other cases, officially removed from anything involving Sang Min's organization. By night, she fell deeper into a relationship that defied every logical explanation. Sang Min's penthouse became her sanctuary. She'd show up after her shifts, sometimes still in her uniform, and he'd have dinner waiting. Korean dishes he taught her the names of, wine that probably cost more than her monthly salary, and conversation that ranged from philosophy to terrible puns that made her laugh until her sides hurt. They talked about everything. His childhood in Seoul before the tragedy, her memories of her mother before cancer stole her away, his dreams of architecture, her early aspirations to be a lawyer before she'd chosen the police academy instead. "Why didn't you become a lawyer?" he asked one night, both of them curled up on his couch, her body fitted against his like they were designed to fit together. "My mother's death," she said quietly. "I watched the justice system move so slowly while she suffered. By the time her case against the doctor who misdiagnosed her went to trial, she'd been dead for a year. I wanted to be on the front lines instead, making a difference in real time." "Do you regret it?" "I did," she admitted. "When things with Blake got bad, I wondered if I'd made a mistake, wondered if choosing a different path would have led me somewhere safer." She tilted her head to look up at him. "But if I'd made different choices, I never would have walked into that warehouse and met you. And would that have been so terrible?" He smiled slightly. "You'd still have your career intact, your reputation unsullied, your life uncomplicated." "Uncomplicated," she repeated. "Is that what you think I want? Safety and simplicity?" "Don't you?" She thought about it, really thought about it. About the woman she'd been 6 months ago, going through the motions, accepting Blake's treatment because it was easier than being alone, following every rule because rules made sense when nothing else did. "No," she said finally. "I think I want to feel alive. And with you, I do." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of emotion that neither of them had quite found words for yet. But beneath the happiness, tension was building. Sang Min's exit strategy was proving complicated. Some members of his organization were loyal and understood. Others saw his attempts to legitimize as betrayal. There were meetings she wasn't invited to, phone calls he took in Korean with a hardness in his voice she'd never heard before. And then there was Blake. Her ex had been calling constantly, dozens of calls a day, escalating from apologies to threats to bizarre declarations of love. She'd blocked his number, but he found new ones. He showed up at the station twice before Marcus escorted him out. He left flowers at her hotel room door with notes that swung between sweet and menacing. "You need to file a restraining order," Sang Min said one evening, his jaw tight as Janelle showed him the latest text. "You belong to me. You always will. I'm handling it," she insisted. "Janelle?" "I said I'm handling it," she snapped, then immediately regretted her tone. "I'm sorry. He's already gotten under my skin enough. I won't let him control me with fear." There's a difference between fear and caution. Sang Min took her phone, his expression darkening as he scrolled through the messages. "This isn't normal behavior. This is obsession." "I know that. I'm a cop, remember? I see this stuff all the time." "Then you know how it ends," he said quietly, "and I won't let that happen to you." There was something in his voice, something protective and possessive and slightly dangerous, that should have bothered her. Instead, it made her feel safe. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "What I do best," he said. "Solve problems." "Sang Min, you can't. I'm not going to kill him if that's what you're thinking." He pulled her into his arms. "But I am going to make sure he understands that you're off limits. Permanently." She should have argued. Should have insisted she could handle Blake herself. But the truth was, she was exhausted from handling everything herself. So she let Sang Min hold her and promised herself she'd deal with the consequences later. Part 11. The Revelation. 8 weeks into their impossible relationship, Janelle woke up feeling like death. She barely made it to Sang Min's bathroom before she was sick, her body rejecting everything in violent waves. When she finally emerged, pale and shaky, he was there with water and concern written all over his face. "Food poisoning?" he asked, helping her back to bed. "Maybe," she said weakly, "or the flu." But 3 days later, when the nausea persisted and her period was a week late, Janelle bought a pregnancy test from a pharmacy on the other side of town where nobody knew her. She took the test in the bathroom of a coffee shop, too afraid to wait until she was back at Sang Min's place, and watched with growing horror as 2 pink lines appeared. Pregnant. She was pregnant, with a crime lord's baby, while trying to maintain her career as a cop, in the middle of the most complicated relationship she'd ever had. Janelle sat on the bathroom floor and laughed, slightly hysterical laughter that bordered on tears. Of course this would happen. Of course the universe would take an already impossible situation and make it catastrophically worse. She spent the rest of the day driving aimlessly, trying to process, trying to figure out what to do, trying to imagine telling Sang Min and anticipating every possible reaction. He'd run. He had to run. What criminal wanted to be tied down by a baby, especially one with a cop? He'd been talking about leaving the life, but that was different from being trapped by fatherhood. He'd see this as the end of his freedom, the death of his exit strategy. Or worse, he'd think she'd trapped him intentionally, that this was some kind of manipulation. By the time she pulled up to his building that evening, she'd convinced herself that telling him would be the end of everything. But she'd never been good at hiding things from him. He took one look at her face when she walked in and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" "Nothing. I'm fine." "Janelle." He crossed to her, hands gentle on her shoulders. "You're pale, you're shaking, and you won't meet my eyes. What's wrong?" She tried to pull away, but he held firm, not constraining, just steady. And something in his unwavering presence broke through her defenses. "I'm pregnant," she blurted out, then clapped a hand over her mouth like she could take the words back. Sang Min froze, completely, utterly froze. His hands on her shoulders went still, his face blank, and Janelle's heart sank. "I know," she said quickly, filling the silence with rushing words. "I know this is terrible timing and probably not what you wanted, and I haven't decided what I'm doing yet, but I thought you should know, and if you want out, I completely understand." "Stop," he said quietly. She stopped, preparing herself for rejection, for him to step back and distance himself from the disaster her life had become. Instead, he pulled her into his arms, tight enough that she could barely breathe, his face buried in her hair, and she felt him shake slightly. "Sang Min? You thought I'd run," he said against her hair. "You thought I'd see this as a trap or a burden, isn't it?" He pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands, and she was shocked to see his eyes were bright with emotion. "Janelle Morrison, you are the most extraordinary woman I've ever met. Strong, brilliant, brave enough to love someone you're supposed to hate. And now you're carrying my child." His thumb swept across her cheek. "That's not a burden. That's a gift I don't deserve, but will spend the rest of my life being grateful for." "You what?" She couldn't process what he was saying. "You want this?" "I want you," he said simply. "Everything that comes with you, everything we build together. A baby, a future, a life that's ours." He smiled slightly, though I'll admit the timing could be better. A laugh bubbled out of her, half relief, half disbelief. That's the understatement of the century. "We'll figure it out," he promised, "like we've figured everything else out, together." She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that love and determination could overcome the massive obstacles ahead. But the part of her that was a cop, that was trained to see threats and calculate odds, whispered that they were living on borrowed time. The next month brought changes so fast Janelle could barely keep up. Her body betrayed her daily with morning sickness that lasted all day. She took to wearing looser clothes, terrified someone at the station would notice. Marcus had started giving her strange looks, but she deflected every question with practiced ease. Sang Min became impossibly attentive, making sure she ate, drank water, rest. He'd researched pregnancy obsessively, could quote statistics about fetal development, had already started talking about converting one of his spare rooms into a nursery. "It's too early," she'd protested. "I'm only 8 weeks. Anything could happen." "Then we'll deal with it," he'd said, "but I choose to be hopeful." His organization transition was nearly complete. He'd identified a successor, a younger man named Jin who understood the business but wanted to steer it toward legitimacy. There were still complications, still members who resisted, but progress was being made. And then Blake made his move. Janelle was leaving the station after a late shift when he appeared in the parking garage, disheveled, drunk, and holding something behind his back. "Janelle," he slurred, "we need to talk." She immediately assessed the threat, her hand moving toward her weapon. "Blake, you need to leave. Now, if you don't, I'll arrest you." "Arrest me?" He laughed bitterly. "For what, wanting to talk to my girlfriend?" "Ex-girlfriend," she corrected, "and you're violating the restraining order." "That piece of paper doesn't mean anything," he spat. "You're mine, Janelle. You'll always be mine, and I know about him." Her blood ran cold. Don't play dumb. The Korean guy, the gangster. Blake moved closer, and she could smell the whiskey on his breath. "You think I didn't notice? Didn't see the way you changed? You're sleeping with him, aren't you? Whoring yourself out to some criminal. Back off, Blake. I'm warning you." "Or what? You'll shoot me?" He pulled his hand from behind his back, revealing a knife, not large, but sharp enough to kill. "Go ahead, but I'll make sure I take you with me." Time seemed to slow. Janelle's training kicked in. Assess the threat, calculate distances, plan responses. But her pregnancy made her hesitate. A fight could hurt the baby, could end everything before it even began. "Blake, put the knife down. You don't want to do this." "Don't I? You ruined my life, Janelle. Made me look like a fool. Left me for some criminal piece of trash. So yeah, I think I do want this." He lunged. Janelle moved on instinct, sidestepping, her hand catching his wrist, twisting. The knife clattered to the ground. But Blake was heavier, stronger, and fueled by liquid courage. They went down together, grappling on the concrete. She fought him, using every technique she'd learned, but he was beyond reason. His hands found her throat, squeezing, and panic flooded through her. Not for herself, but for the baby. "Blake, stop!" She choked out. "I'm pregnant." The words made him pause for just a second, just long enough for her to bring her knee up hard. He rolled away, gasping, and she scrambled for her gun. But before she could reach it, a figure appeared from the shadows, Sang Min, moving with deadly precision. He pulled Blake up by his collar, slammed him against a car, and pressed a gun to his temple. "You touched her," Sang Min said, his voice colder than Janelle had ever heard it. You put your hands on her and on my child. Sang Min, don't, Janelle rasped, her throat aching. He's not worth it. Isn't he? Sang Min's finger tensed on the trigger. He tried to kill you, kill our baby. Give me one reason I shouldn't end him right now. Because I'm asking you not to, she said, struggling to her feet. Because if you kill him, you'll never get out. You'll never be free. And I need you, Sang Min. Our baby needs you. The war on his face was visible, between the man who'd built an empire on violence and the man who wanted to be better for her. Finally, slowly, he lowered the gun. You're right, he said. He's not worth it. He released Blake, who slumped to the ground, whimpering. But Blake, if you ever come near her again, if you even think about her, I will find you. And next time, she won't be here to stop me. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police. Sang Min looked at Janelle, conflict clear in his eyes. I have to go. I know, she said. He crossed to her, kissed her hard and fast, his hand coming to rest briefly on her still flat stomach. I love you, he said. Both of you. Then he disappeared into the shadows, leaving Janelle to explain to responding officers why her ex-boyfriend had attacked her in the parking garage and to hide that the man who'd saved her was the same man she was supposed to be hunting. Part 13. Unraveling. The attack on Janelle made the news. LAPD detective assaulted by ex-boyfriend in station parking garage. Blake was arrested and charged with attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, and violation of a restraining order. He'd be going away for a long time. But the coverage brought attention Janelle didn't want. Internal Affairs had questions about why she'd been working late alone. Her captain wanted to know why she hadn't reported Blake's escalating behavior. And worst of all, someone had noticed a figure fleeing the scene, a man matching Sang Min's description. Detective Morrison, Captain Harrison said, calling her into his office 3 days after the attack. We need to talk. She knew before she sat down that this conversation would change everything. I've been hearing things, Harrison continued. Rumors about you and Sang Min, about inappropriate contact, about you being seen near his properties. And now, conveniently, he happens to be at the exact place and time you're attacked? He saved my life, Janelle said carefully. Did he? Or did he happen to be following you? Watching you? Harrison leaned forward. I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need a direct answer. Are you in a relationship with Sang Min? She could lie. Should lie. Her career depended on it. But she was so tired of lying. Yes, she said quietly. I am. The silence that followed was deafening. Jesus Christ, Morrison, Harrison finally said, running a hand over his face. Do you have any idea what you've done? You've compromised every case you've worked on for months. Every arrest you've made is now questionable. Every piece of evidence you've touched could be thrown out. I know, she said, but I fell in love with him, and I can't apologize for that. Love? Harrison's voice rose. He's a criminal. He's responsible for dozens of crimes. And he's trying to get out, she interrupted. He's legitimizing his businesses, setting up successors. He's changing, Captain. For me, for our baby. The last words slipped out before she could stop them. Harrison stared at her. You're pregnant? With his child? She nodded, feeling tears prick her eyes despite her best efforts to remain professional. Morrison, I don't. He stopped, seeming at a loss for words. I need to report this. You understand that, right? This goes beyond department policy. This is the end of my career, she finished. I know. You'll need to turn in your badge and gun, effective immediately. There will be an investigation. You might face charges for obstruction, for evidence tampering, for... He shook his head. How did you let this happen? I don't know, she said honestly. I walked into a warehouse to arrest him, and somehow I fell in love instead. And maybe that makes me stupid or weak or unprofessional, but it doesn't make it less real. She set her badge and gun on his desk, feeling like she was cutting off a limb. For what it's worth, Harrison said as she stood to leave, you were a damn good cop, one of the best I've ever worked with, but you made a choice, and now you have to live with it. I know, she said, and I would make the same choice again. The media had a field day. Dirty cop falls for crime lord. Romeo and Juliet of the LAPD. Badge betrayed for love. Janelle's phone blew up with calls from reporters, former colleagues, curiosity seekers. She blocked most of them, changing her number twice before she finally found peace. Sang Min had wanted her to move into his penthouse immediately, but she'd resisted. I need to figure out who I am without the badge, she'd explained. I've been Detective Morrison for so long, I don't know how to just be Janelle. Then let me help you figure it out, he'd said. So they'd compromised. She stayed at his place most nights, but kept her hotel room as a retreat when the walls closed in. The pregnancy progressed. 12 weeks, then 16. Her body changed, subtle curves becoming obvious, her clothes no longer able to hide the growing life inside her. They went to doctor's appointments together, Sang Min holding her hand during ultrasounds, his face transformed with wonder when they heard the heartbeat. It's real, he'd whispered, staring at the screen. There's really a person in there. You're just now figuring that out? She'd teased, but she understood. The abstract had become concrete, a tiny human they'd created together. His organization transition completed. Jin took over operations, steering things toward legitimate ventures. There were bumps. 2 members tried to stage a coup and had to be convinced to retire. 1 shipment was seized by the feds, a rival group tested boundaries. But slowly, steadily, Sang Min extracted himself. I'm opening an architecture firm, he told her one evening, showing her plans on his laptop. Using money I've saved legitimately, hiring people who need second chances, like I'm getting. You're serious about this, she said, studying the detailed business plan. I'm serious about you, he corrected. About our family. About building a life that won't put you in danger or put our child at risk. This is me trying to be worthy of what you gave up for me. I didn't give it up for you, she said. I gave it up for us. But there were hard days too. Days when she missed her badge with an ache that felt physical. Days when she saw news coverage of crimes she would have worked and felt useless. Days when the weight of her choices crushed her. Sang Min was there for all of it. Patient when she raged, steady when she cried, loving even when she pushed him away. You don't have to be okay, he told her during one particularly dark evening when she'd locked herself in the bathroom, sobbing. You don't have to pretend this isn't hard. I'm here for the mess, Janelle, not just the pretty parts. I ruined my life for you, she said through tears. Some days, I wake up and I can't believe I did that. I know, he said quietly, and if you ever decide you made a mistake, if you ever want to walk away, I'll understand. I'll make sure you and the baby are taken care of, but I won't trap you. She looked at him then, really looked at him, at the man who transformed his entire life because she'd asked him to, who sat through pregnancy appointments and rubbed her feet and researched nursery furniture with the same intensity he'd once brought to criminal enterprises. I don't want to walk away, she said. I just need to grieve who I used to be so I can figure out who I'm becoming. Then grieve, he said. I'll be here when you're ready. They should have known it wouldn't be that easy. Janelle was 20 weeks pregnant, showing clearly now, when the first threat arrived, a photo of her and Sang Min together slipped under the door of the penthouse with a note. You took something from me. I'll take everything from you. The handwriting was distinctive, angry, familiar. Blake. He's in jail, Janelle said, staring at the photo with growing dread. He's supposed to be in jail awaiting trial. He posted bail 2 days ago, Sang Min said, already on his phone calling his security team. I had people watching him, but he slipped surveillance. How did you not tell me he was out? I was handling it, he said, and the familiar words made her flash back to her own dismissal of Blake's threats months ago. That's what I said, she reminded him. And look where it got us. He set his phone down, his expression grim. You're right. I should have told you, but Janelle, I didn't want you to worry. You're pregnant. You're dealing with losing your career. I'm also a trained detective who knows how to handle threats, she interrupted. Don't protect me by keeping me in the dark. We're supposed to be partners. You're right. I'm sorry. He crossed to her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. What do you want to do? She studied the photo, taken recently, judging by her visible pregnancy. Blake had been watching them. For how long? And what was he planning? We need to find him before he finds us, she said. And I know Blake. He's not just going to threaten. He's going to act. They spent the next 3 days fortifying security and searching. Sang Min's people combed the city while Janelle used her remaining contacts in the police department. Marcus, who'd stayed loyal despite everything, fed her information off the record. Blake had been staying at a motel in the valley. He'd maxed out credit cards, buying weapons. He'd posted bail using money from a mysterious benefactor, someone with deep pockets and a grudge against Sang Min. The Vasquez cartel, Sang Min realized. They're using Blake to get to me, to us. Why? You're out. Jin's running things now. Because I humiliated them during that warehouse incident, killed 3 of their top men, and now they see you as my weakness. His jaw tightened. They're not wrong. Janelle hated being called a weakness, but she understood the logic. So what's their endgame? Kill me to hurt you? Worse, take you, use you and the baby as leverage to force me back in, to destroy everything I've built. He pulled her close, his hand protective over her rounded stomach. I won't let that happen. Then we end this, she said firmly. We find Blake, we find whoever's backing him, and we finish it before our baby is born. Janelle, don't tell me I'm pregnant so I should stay safe, she cut him off. I'm pregnant, which means I'm even more motivated to eliminate the threat. Our child deserves to be born into a world where Blake and the cartel aren't hanging over our heads. He studied her face, the determination in her eyes, the set of her jaw, and slowly nodded. Okay, but we do this smart. We use every resource we have, and you don't take unnecessary risks. Agreed. Marcus called that night with a lead. Blake had been spotted at an abandoned industrial park in East LA, the same area where the Vasquez cartel operated. He's meeting someone there tomorrow night, Marcus said. Janelle, I shouldn't be telling you this. If anyone finds out, I know, and I'm grateful, she said. Marcus, after everything, why are you still helping me? Because you're my friend, he said simply. And because I saw what that bastard did to you. Whatever else happened, whatever mistakes you made, you deserve justice. She hung up and relayed the information to Sang Min, who immediately started planning. I'll go in with my team. We'll go in, she corrected. Together. Janelle, you're 5 months pregnant. And I'm also the best negotiator you have. Blake is unstable, but he still has feelings for me, twisted as they are. If anyone can talk him down, it's me. She met his eyes. Plus, I'm not letting you walk into a trap without me. We're in this together, remember? He wanted to argue. She could see it in every line of his body. But he also knew she was right. Fine, he said finally. But you wear a vest, you stay behind cover, and if things go sideways, you run. Promise me. I promise, she lied, knowing full well she'd never abandon him if it came to that. The industrial park was a skeleton of rusted metal and broken concrete, illuminated by sodium lights that turned everything sickly yellow. Sang Min's team positioned themselves strategically, 5 men, all armed, all loyal. Janelle wore a bulletproof vest modified to accommodate her pregnancy. Her old service weapon was in her hand. Marcus had misplaced it from evidence for her. The familiar weight felt right, like greeting an old friend. Blake, she called out, her voice echoing through the empty spaces. I know you're here. Let's talk. For a long moment, nothing. Then Blake emerged from behind a shipping container, looking worse than she'd ever seen him. His clothes were dirty, his face unshaven, his eyes wild. But he held a gun steadily, pointed right at her. You came, he said, and there was something broken in his voice. You actually came. You threatened me, she said, keeping her voice calm and steady, the tone she'd used hundreds of times talking down suspects. What did you expect? I expected you to ignore me like you've been ignoring me for months, he spat. Too busy playing house with your Korean gangster to care about me. Blake, this has to stop. Whatever you think will happen here, it won't end well for you. End well? He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Nothing's ended well for me since you left. I lost my job, my reputation, everything. Because of you. No, she said firmly, because of your choices. You hit me, Blake. You abused me. That's why I left. I loved you, he screamed. Everything I did was because I loved you. That's not love, Sang Min said, stepping out of the shadows beside Janelle. Love doesn't leave bruises. Love doesn't terrorize. Love doesn't destroy. Blake's gun swiveled to point at Sang Min. This is all your fault. You took her from me. Poisoned her against me. I opened her eyes, Sang Min corrected, showed her what it felt like to be treated with respect, with tenderness, the way she always deserved. Shut up! Blake's hand was shaking now. Shut up, shut up, shut up! Blake, look at me, Janelle said, stepping forward despite Sang Min's warning hand on her arm. This isn't you. You're not a killer. You're a lawyer. You believe in the system. Injustice. Justice? He laughed again. Where was justice when you destroyed my life? When you got pregnant with his bastard child while I was in jail? The words hit like a slap. Janelle's hand instinctively went to her stomach. How did you know? I have friends, Blake said. Friends who told me everything. About your little love nest, about the baby, about how you threw away your badge for some criminal scum. His eyes hardened. You were supposed to be mine. I was never yours, she said quietly. I was with you, but I was never yours. There's a difference. Not anymore. Blake's finger tightened on the trigger. If I can't have you, no one will. Everything happened at once. Blake fired. Sang Min moved, shoving Janelle behind him. The bullet hit Sang Min in the shoulder, spinning him around. Janelle screamed, raising her own weapon. But before she could fire, gunshots erupted from multiple directions. Sang Min's men taking Blake down. He fell, blood blooming across his chest, his gun clattering away. Sang Min! Janelle dropped to her knees beside him, her hands pressing against his wound. Stay with me! Stay with me! I'm okay, he gasped, though blood was seeping through her fingers. The baby, are you okay? The baby's fine, I'm fine. But you're shot, you idiot! Why did you do that? Because I love you, he said simply. Both of you. I'd take 1,000 bullets if it meant keeping you safe. Tears streamed down her face as sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police. Don't you dare die on me, Sang Min. Don't you dare leave me alone. Not planning on it, he said, his hand finding hers. We have a baby to raise, an architecture firm to build, a life to live. I'm not missing that. But even as he spoke, his eyes were closing, his breathing becoming shallow. No, 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 Janelle chanted, pressing harder on the wound. Marcus! Someone! We need an ambulance now! Blake was still conscious, barely blood bubbling from his lips. Janelle, he whispered. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She looked at him, the man who'd terrorized her, who'd tried to kill the father of her child, and felt nothing but pity. I know, she said quietly. Then she turned back to Sang Min, willing him to hold on. The bullet had missed Sang Min's major arteries by millimeters. He spent 2 days in surgery and another week in the hospital, Janelle never leaving his side. She slept in a chair next to his bed, her hand always touching him, as if she could keep him tethered to life through sheer will. Blake died during surgery. The bullets from Sang Min's men had shredded his internal organs. Part of Janelle mourned, not for the man he'd become, but for the man she'd thought he was when they first met. The rest of her felt only relief that the threat was gone. The investigation into the shooting was complicated. Technically, Sang Min's men had killed Blake, which should have resulted in charges. But the evidence was clear. Blake had fired first, had threatened both Janelle and Sang Min, had been working with the Vasquez cartel to orchestrate a larger attack. The police, the DA, even the FBI, who'd been building a case against the cartel, everyone agreed that Blake's death was justified self-defense. The Vasquez cartel was dismantled in the aftermath. The FBI had been waiting for an excuse to move, and Blake's connection gave them everything they needed. Raids happened across the city. Arrests were made. The threat that had hung over Sang Min's exit from the criminal world evaporated like morning fog. It's over, Sang Min said from his hospital bed, his arm in a sling, his face still pale but his eyes clear. Really, truly over. Is it? Janelle asked, sitting carefully on the edge of his bed, her hand resting on her growing belly. Just like that? Just like that, he confirmed. Jin's legitimate now. The cartel's gone. Blake's dead. We're free, Janelle, to build the life we talked about, to raise our baby without looking over our shoulders. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that the worst was behind them. What about my career? She asked quietly. I gave up everything for you, and now you get to choose what comes next, he said, his good hand finding hers. You could go back to school, become a lawyer like you originally planned, or work as a consultant. I know 3 private security firms who'd hire you in a heartbeat. Or you could take time with the baby and figure things out later. The point is, you have options. Options bought with blood money? She challenged. Options bought with legitimate money from my architecture firm, which is already landing contracts, he corrected gently. I'm not that man anymore, Janelle. I haven't been since the day I decided you were worth changing for. She studied his face, the sincerity in his eyes, the love written in every line, and felt something in her chest ease. I want to believe you, she whispered. Then believe me, he said. Believe in us. Believe in this. His hand covered hers on her stomach, where their baby was growing. We've survived everything else. We'll survive this too. Marcus visited the next day, looking uncomfortable in his detective's suit in the private hospital room Sang Min had insisted on paying for. How's he doing? Marcus asked Janelle quietly. Recovering. Strong. Stubborn as hell. She smiled slightly. You know, the usual. Marcus nodded, then held out an envelope. This came for you? At the station. She opened it to find a letter from the LAPD Internal Affairs Division. Her hands shook as she read it. Detective Morrison, following a complete review of your case, we have determined that while your relationship with Mr. Ta, Sang Min represented a serious breach of professional ethics, your actions ultimately contributed to dismantling a significant criminal organization. Your work, both official and unofficial, led to multiple arrests and the disruption of cartel operations. While we cannot reinstate your position, we are offering you the opportunity to have your resignation changed to retirement with full benefits. Additionally, should you wish to pursue private investigation licensing or consulting work, this department will provide references to your exemplary record prior to the incident in question. This does not excuse the breach of protocol, but it acknowledges the complexity of your situation and the positive outcome of your actions. Janelle read it twice, then a third time, not quite believing it. They're giving me an out, she said to Marcus. They're letting me leave with dignity. You earned that, Marcus said firmly. Whatever else happened, you were a damn good cop. And from what I saw, you helped bring down more criminals in the last 6 months than most of us do in our entire careers. By falling in love with one? By being brave enough to see past the label to the man underneath, Marcus corrected. Not everyone can do that. After he left, Janelle showed the letter to Sang Min, who read it carefully. How do you feel? He asked. Like I can breathe again, she admitted. Like maybe the universe isn't entirely punishing me for choosing love. The universe never punishes people for choosing love, he said. People punish themselves. But you were brave enough to choose it anyway, knowing the cost. He pulled her down for a gentle kiss. That's not weakness, Janelle. That's the strongest thing I've ever seen. 3 months later, Janelle went into labor at 12 a.m. Sang Min, who'd been sleeping lightly since his shoulder had healed, was awake instantly. Is it time? Are you okay? Should I call the doctor? The hospital? Do we need? Breathe, she said, even as she gripped the bedpost through a contraction. Yes, it's time. Yes, I'm okay. Yes, call everyone. And yes, we need to go. Now. The drive to the hospital was a blur. Sang Min held her hand, murmuring encouragement in Korean and English, his calm presence anchoring her through the pain. 14 hours later, their daughter was born, screaming, perfect, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would eventually settle into the same deep brown as her father's. She's beautiful, Sang Min breathed, holding the tiny bundle with the careful reverence of a man who'd never expected to have something so precious. She's perfect. She's ours, Janelle said, exhausted and elated and overwhelmed by the love flooding through her. We made her, this perfect little person. They named her Maya, a name that worked in both English and Korean, meaning illusion in one language and water in another. A name that represented the fluidity of their journey, the way reality had shifted and reformed around their love. Marcus visited, bringing flowers and a teddy bear that was bigger than the baby. Sang Min's men, his former men, now employees of his legitimate architecture firm, came bearing gifts and congratulations. Even Jin stopped by, bowing respectfully to Janelle and promising that their family would always be protected. But the most surprising visit came from Captain Harrison. I probably shouldn't be here, he said, standing awkwardly in the doorway with a small gift bag. But I wanted to see for myself that you're okay. Captain, Janelle said, genuinely surprised. I didn't expect. You were one of my best detectives, he interrupted. Whatever else happened, that's still true, and I figure a baby deserves all the support she can get, even from her mother's former boss. He handed her the bag, a children's book about a brave young girl who grew up to be a detective. Janelle's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. For this and for the retirement letter. It meant more than you know. You earned it, Harrison said. Then he turned to Sang Min, his expression hardening slightly. You hurt her or that baby, and retired or not, I'll find a way to make your life hell. Understood, Sang Min said seriously. But I can promise you, Captain, I would die before I let anything happen to them. Harrison studied him for a long moment, then nodded. See that you remember that. After he left, Sang Min looked at Janelle with a mixture of amusement and affection. Your old boss just threatened me. He cares, she said simply, in his own way. I know. He settled carefully beside her on the hospital bed, their daughter sleeping peacefully between them. We're going to be okay, aren't we? All three of us? Better than okay, she said, leaning her head on his good shoulder. We're going to be happy. Janelle stood in the doorway of their new home. Not the penthouse which Sang Min had sold, but a house in the suburbs with a yard and a swing set, and neighbors who thought they were just a normal family. Inside, she could hear Maya babbling in Korean, words Sang Min taught her alongside English. The architecture firm was thriving, with 3 major contracts and a reputation for innovative, beautiful designs. Janelle had started consulting work for a private investigation firm, using her skills to help people while maintaining flexibility for motherhood. Their life wasn't perfect. There were still hard days when Janelle missed her badge, when the loss of her former identity ached. There were nights when Sang Min woke from nightmares about his past, when the weight of everything he'd done threatened to crush him. But they faced it together. Maya toddled into view, her tiny hands reaching up for her mother. Mama, up! Janelle scooped her up, breathing in that unique baby smell that never got old. Hey, baby girl, where's Daddy? Kitchen, Maya announced proudly. Cook! Sure enough, Sang Min was in the kitchen, attempting to make dinner. Korean fusion that usually turned out either amazing or catastrophic with no in-between. He looked up when they entered, his face transforming with the smile he reserved only for them. How was your day? He asked, crossing to kiss first Janelle, then Maya's forehead. Solved 2 cases, picked up Maya from daycare, stopped a tantrum over goldfish crackers, Janelle recounted. The usual. You? Landed the Civic Center contract, had 3 meetings, and missed both of you terribly, he said. Also the usual. They moved through dinner preparation together, a dance they'd perfected over months, passing Maya between them, stealing kisses, laughing at Maya's attempts to help by throwing vegetables on the floor. This was their life now. Normal, domestic, beautiful in its simplicity. After Maya was in bed, they sat on the back porch, Janelle curled against Sang Min's side, watching the stars emerge. Do you ever regret it? He asked quietly. Giving up your career for this? I didn't give it up, she corrected. I traded it for something better. For you. For Maya. For this life we've built. She tilted her head to look up at him. Do you ever regret leaving your empire? Not even for a second, he said firmly. That world was darkness and blood and power without purpose. This? He gestured at the house, at the life they'd created. This is light. This is real. This is everything I never knew I wanted until I met a stubborn detective who refused to arrest me when she had the chance. I arrested you, she protested, multiple times in my head. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine, and yet here I am still free. Technically, you're imprisoned, she teased, by domestic responsibility and fatherhood. Best prison I've ever seen, he said, pulling her closer. Wouldn't escape even if you gave me the key. They sat in comfortable silence, the night settling around them like a blanket. Inside, Maya slept peacefully. Tomorrow they'd both go back to work, building their careers, their family, their future. But tonight, this moment, they were simply together, simply happy, simply home. So there you have it, the story of Janelle and Sang Min, 2 people on opposite sides of the law who found each other in the darkness and built something beautiful from the ashes of their former lives. What did you think? Did you love their journey? Were you rooting for them from the start? Or did they win you over along the way? Drop a comment below and let me know your favorite moment. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more emotional, intense, enemies to lovers content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. And hey, if you want more content like this, more forbidden romance, more impossible love stories, more tales of people who risk everything for each other, let me know in the comments what kind of story you want to see next. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most beautiful love stories are the ones that should never have happened at all. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.